I heard the shots over my left shoulder, and I, did one of those, and I knew immediately what it was. So I put my lens back on the stage, and I saw the Secret Service rushing in.
Jared Polin, Frono's Photo.com, and I had the pleasure of sitting down with Evan Vucci of the AP, who is a photojournalist who captured this photo right here. This is one of the most iconic images that I've ever seen, and it is one of the most iconic images in American history. It's going to go down as one of those type of images. So I reached out to Evan last week and asked, can we sit down and talk photography, talk about your career, and of course talk about the events that led to you capturing this particular image. So here is the interview with Evan Vucci. Thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, there's a billion and one questions, and it's not just, I have a billion and one questions, and my viewers have sent in, just have questioned a lot of things. But for me as a photojournalist, not in the same world as you, but someone who has been in the world a little bit, these things just run through my brain all the time. But sure. Let's take a step back, because I don't want to just jump right into that. I want to get people to understand you and how long you've been shooting and where you've come from, and just where did the interest take hold when you started shooting?
Yeah, I think it was in high school, on the yearbook staff, really. I remember when I was very, very young, I went to, at the time it was the Washington Redskins. I went to their training camp, and my dad had an old camera, and I took some pictures with it. And then I remember getting the pictures back, and I was like, man, that's awesome. I loved it. And I must have been in 6th or 7th grade. And then in high school, I was on the yearbook staff, and I just loved photography, and I ended up going to RIT. And I originally was going to study advertising. I wanted to be an advertising / fashion photographer, and I did that for my first, year and a half at RIT. And then Michael Williamson, who is a Washington Post photographer, came to my school and gave a talk. And he showed all this amazing work from his travels around the world, and he's an incredible photojournalist. And I was so inspired that I changed my major, and I wanted to focus on photojournalism. And from there, I graduated from RIT and did some internships, and and here I am.
Well, let's look at RIT, because when I graduated high school in '99, and RIT has always been you're in photography, RIT. You got to go to RIT if you want to be anything. Mm-hmm. Was that the case? Why was that the case?
I don't. It was. I think you look at photo schools, and you're looking at, RIT, you're looking at Missouri, you're looking at Western Kentucky. Those are sort of the places that people gravitate towards. And I knew that at the time I wanted to go into, like I said, advertising, and their program at RIT was phenomenal for advertising and learning light and learning, the technical aspects of photography. So that's what I was interested in. But yeah, it's a great education. It opened a lot of doors for me, certainly. And I had a built-in network right there. And from there, I went to the Fayetteville Observer down in North Carolina. I got a 30-hour week position down there. And then I got a job with the International Olympic Committee in Sydney, Australia for the 2000 Games. And I was a photo manager at the aquatics venue. So all the photographers from around the world would come in to set up at the aquatic center for all the swimming and diving events. And I would meet them, and I ran into Doug Mills, who I actually was with during this whole thing. And he said, hey man, when you come back to DC, come to the office and, let's see your work. And from there I started freelancing for AP, and I got my foot in the door, and then I was hired, a few years later.
It seems like Doug is the master connector, and it just seems like he's a mentor to everybody.
He's an amazing guy. He not only did he get my foot in the door at AP, I also didn't have, I was poor man, broke. I didn't have long lens or I didn't have a 300 millimeter lens. I could barely afford gear. So he loaned me a 300 millimeter lens for like 2 years and never asked for it back, never anything. And then I finally gave it back to him. He said, man, he wouldn't even, he wouldn't even accept anything. he's just such a good guy. And but however, he does make me bring him lunch every day. So I'm still paying the price for his hospitality, I guess.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of sitting next to him during one of the World Series games in 2022 in Philly. We were sat next to each other the whole game, and he just is great to talk to.
He's very, very humble, an incredible photographer, always thinking. He was the perfect person to meet early in my career because he taught me the value of a work ethic. He is still out there grinding and outworking people and always thinking, like, how can I do this a little bit differently? When I first met him, he was at AP, and now he's at the New York Times, and he's always been a mentor to all of us, and just a good person, man. Heart of gold.
Have there been other photographers along the way that have taken you under their wing?
Yeah, I think this business especially, it's so hard to break into that you need people to help you. And now I've had tons of photographers offer help and advice, and DC especially has a really good photo community, and we're all pretty tight knit. And now I'm now on the other side of that, where if a young photographer comes to me and they're showing interest and they're showing determination and they're showing that they really want to do this, then I'll help them. I work with young photographers all the time to try to help them get their foot in the door. As long as they're serious about it. If they're bullshitting, then forget it. But if they're serious about it, this is a really hard business to break into. But if they're serious about it, I'm more than willing to help.
And how does your fitness? How does that? I watch your Instagrams. You're always with the mixed martial arts.
Well, man, look at you. You look great, man. Your transformation you've done over the last 3 years is incredible.
I appreciate it, but
no,
I'm not mixing it up on the mats with those guys.
No, I'm really into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and so I've been doing that for about 7 years. It's a great outlet for stress and everything else, and I absolutely love it. And I'm pretty serious about it. Compete and travel around, and my daughter's into it, so it's great.
How much do you feel that your fitness helps you in your daily grind of having to travel and shoot and be on point? I think it helps, but I think for me personally, and I'm not speaking for everyone, but I think it's a mental thing where, it gives you that break where, okay, for the next 2 hours, I have me time and I can focus on me and I don't have to worry about the stresses and the deadlines and all that other stuff. So, and the benefits of it also are helpful too. And, being on the road and carrying gear and doing all the things, just trying to stay fit. But I always thought of it as a mental health thing for me, and it's super important to me. I agree. I find that it helps in everyday life, but also in business to be able to do that. Because when you're traveling, you're on Air Force One how often?
We'll travel, 2, 3, 4 days a week. Sometimes just day trips. So you're getting on a plane, getting off the plane. You're just always on the go. So it's hard to eat healthy and do all the things that you need to do to be healthy. So it's like when you can make the time to get those workouts in and get decent meals, and you take advantage of it.
I think one thing, if I have this correct, that when you fly on Air Force One, it's not like it's paid for by the government.
No.
AP has to cover everything.
That's a great point. So we spend a ton of money covering the president. So we get bills to at the end of every month or the end of every trip. So we could go overseas for an assignment, like a week-long assignment. It could cost between $60,000 and $100,000, depending on how many flights you have. And then you're also thinking about, like, we have Osprey flights and motorcades. We pay for all that stuff. The government doesn't pay for anything. So we spend a lot of money covering the president.
Yeah, I think that's something that people don't realize.
Yeah, it's you'll see those bills and it's shocking, but it's important. It's that's what our members expect. So
yeah, that's insane. All right, let's jump into the day of the events, because obviously it was an incredible week for photography. it's an unfortunate situation that everybody was put in to have to react and figure out what to do in just react to the scene. But I think the biggest thing that came out of it is how important still imagery continues to be and will continue to be, because it's not being replaced by robots, AI, or cell phones.
Yeah, I think that I saw what you were saying on one of your earlier videos about the power of still photography, and it was a good example of that power. Like what we all captured on the ground, the video doesn't really show that chaos, but that's the power of the still photograph. Completely showed through. So it was a moment that we can all look at and say, man, still photography is not going to be replaced anytime soon. And I think I saw you say, it's not going to be replaced by a cell phone. It's not going to be replaced by AI. We were right there in the moment doing our jobs, and I think we all did a pretty good job.
So walk us through it. You're in the buffer. It's a normal event, which you've done a billion of these events, and you never know what's going to happen.
Right.
What happens?
So I'm in the buffer, towards the back of the buffer. I have my 70-200 on, and I was making some frames, and he had a chart up about immigration. And then I turned behind me and I switched to a wide angle, and I made a few frames of like the people in the front row. And then I came back through and I raised my camera up, and I heard the shots over my left shoulder, and I did one of those, and I knew immediately what it was. So I put my lens back on the stage, and I saw the Secret Service rushing in. So they were rushing to cover him, and I made a few frames with my 70-200, and then I started running to the stage, and I switched to my wide. I had my wide, and just started photographing and trying to see, okay, at that point he was completely covered up. So I was just trying to find, any angle where I could see him. So we were all just sort of looking for where to go. And I ran to the other side of the stage real quick. Nothing was showing up over there. So I came back, and then I started thinking, okay, well, where are they going to go? What's next? So as he started coming up, that's when I ran to directly in front of the lectern. And I guess the video of us, the stage was pretty high. So you can see us sort of holding our cameras above our head with that flip out screen, just trying to get that. And then I just remember them turning their shoulders. And as soon as they turned their shoulders, I knew which way they were going, because I knew there was an SUV for an emergency. So I bolted to the stairs, and I knew they were going to come down those stairs. And that's from the angle that I made some of the photos that have been shared pretty widely.
The question that I was trying to figure out is, it looks like you're looking through the viewfinder for some, and you're holding the camera up for others. I'm a big proponent of looking straight through the camera, but I understand in certain situations there's a need for the other. But the main photo came from looking through?
Yeah, 95% of everything I shot was through the viewfinder. The only thing I shot was over my head was the stage, just because it was so high, and I was trying to get over the lectern to see him. And that's the head-on view of him pumping his fist. And I think at one point I was putting it up, and I came down, and you could see me sort of readjusting the exposure real quick and just seeing how it looked. And then I went back up to recompose. And then I ran to the side and did everything through the viewfinder. But the majority of it is through the viewfinder.
Now, when you're in that situation, I mean, you reacted by running towards, right? Mm-hmm. You've been in war zones. You've covered war zones. Was there your first step just took you forward? You didn't even think? You just went? Yeah,
I think that it's not like, oh, look how brave I, it has nothing to do with that at all. No. It's like people are, and that's not even, but you're not even thinking about that. All you're thinking about is like, I'm a photojournalist, and, photographers, we don't get a second chance. So, I always say the curse of the photojournalist is we never get a second chance. I can't call for a quote later. I can't. So everything that's happening right now, I need to capture. So as soon as I heard those shots, I knew immediately, like, this is going to be, an important moment in American history. And then this is the reason I'm here. And I got to do this job the best of my ability. And, you don't really think about, the consequences or anything like that. You're just there doing the work, and you're not thinking, you just kind of, your brain just shuts off, man. You go into work mode, and you're just doing what you would do whether or not there was a shooting or whether or not, it's the end of the rally and nothing had happened. If he's walking off stage and waving to the crowd and pumping his fists and, dancing or doing whatever he does, I would have photographed it in the same way. It just happened to be that, he's now being carried off the stage and protected by Secret Service. But, as far as like my job and what I'm trying to capture, I'm not going to change just because the moment is bigger. So you're not thinking about, anything other than like, what is the light? What's the exposure? What am I doing? Where is he going? You're making all these calculations in your head, and just trying to, do the job, man. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, you don't get a second chance. So I think all of us were just in the moment, and, those guys did a great job. And, I'm just happy that, I didn't drop the ball and I did the job.
Yeah. I mean, tremendous. Everybody in there captured something, and and it's unique and different.
That's what's cool too, right? It's like you can stand next to, 3 other photographers and everyone will come up with something slightly different. And, that's one of the cool things about photography is we all kind of see the world a little bit differently. So that was cool.
Now, when you're composing that shot, the shot where they're coming in and the flag is up above, how are you deciding? Because you're the only one who got that composition at that time.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're all looking at things a little bit differently. I was, I knew that I wanted that flag in there. And it was like right above his head, and the wind hit it just right. And he started pumping his fists, and I was like, okay, this is perfect for the composition. So it all made sense. It was clean. The lines all came together. And like I said before, it's the same composition that I would have been doing whether or not he's coming off the stage at the end of a rally where nothing happened. I probably would have made a similar photo of him just walking off stage or, waving to the crowd. It's the same thing.
From a settings standpoint, like to get a little on the technical side, you're using an A9.
Let's do it.
Do you A9 III with both cameras?
Yeah, both cameras are A9 IIIs. I've been shooting Sony for 3 or 4 years now. I think AP, we switched to Sony, and we just got the A9 IIIs, but I guess whenever they came out, I'm not sure when they came out, but I think a few weeks before they came out, we got them in our hands, and it's been a great camera. And I see people arguing like megapixels and all that stuff. I just don't, honestly, it's funny because the guys at Sony always tease me because they're like, man, I'm surprised you even have your firmware updated because it's just a tool to me.
Yeah. So with it being a tool that has a lot of different technologies that have changed, sure. Are you shooting at 120 frames a second? Where do you have it set?
No. Gosh, no. I turn that stuff down. That's the last thing I want to deal with is editing all that. And not only that, if you're sitting there and you're just trying to hammer on the motor drive and like you're just looking everywhere, trying to capture everything, then you end up with nothing. And I always tell young photographers, I'm like, dude, listen, like you can't make all the pictures, okay? You can't run around and lose your head and try to catch this and catch that and do this and do that, because at the end you'll look at your take and be like, man, I missed everything. It's because you weren't focused. So the last thing I want to do is just be there hammering on the motor drive. So I think I shoot my my motor drive at 6 frames a second or 8 frames a second, which is more than enough. And and I'm not hammering on it either. I'm not sitting there just so you're picking your moments and composing and just trying to slow down. And that's the other thing. It's like when this thing is happening, you keep telling yourself, man, just slow down. Okay, what's happening over here? What's now all the where are the agents coming from? What else do I need to make photos of? So you're always looking for other stuff as well.
Are you earplugs in or no earplugs when you're shooting these things?
No earplug. Yeah, I want to hear what's going on around me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
RAW. I know that there's RAWs, there's JPEGs, and I know.
Yeah, of course.
Are you burning both at the same time?
I am. So to slot 1, I have my JPEGs, and to slot 2, I have my RAWs. And so the way, I don't know if your audience knows this, but the way news photographers work nowadays is we're sending 99% of what I do, I send from the back of the camera. So I just got a new, yes.
I'm holding it up.
Yes, dude, that thing, man, saved my life.
Yeah, if anybody's not listening or watching the video portion, this is the new PDF IP something from Sony that allows you to I'll let you tell how this saved your life.
Yeah, so 99% of what I do, I work, I send directly from the back of the camera to an editor that's waiting. I load in my captions ahead of time. So I'll put in like a dummy. So before this event started, I'll put in a dummy caption like Republican presidential candidate, former President Donald Trump speaks at a campaign rally in Butler, PA, date, whatever. And I'll load a couple like things that could happen during that rally, like, arrives on stage, and I'll load like 3 captions in there and I'll put it in the back of the camera, right? So every frame I have has a caption put on it. And then I'll look through the viewfinder and I'll just edit in the viewfinder. I'll hit a button and it automatically sends the images to a waiting editor. My communication that day was down everywhere. I didn't have cell phones. I didn't have my ATT MiFi wasn't working. My cell phone wasn't working. I couldn't get anything to work. And that Sony that you just held up, it had a T-Mobile SIM in it. And man, I would literally hit the button and it was gone. So it was, one of the most stressful situations to work in, but having that technology and working, it took so much pressure off of me because the photos were going basically instantly. It was probably, from a transmitting point of view, it was the least stressful event I've ever covered because everything worked. It was amazing. So a lot of us will now be carrying that new Sony transmitter. It's been good. And I'm not like a Sony fanboy or anything. I don't know much about technology, but it worked and it was awesome.
Yeah, so are you plugged in directly or is it transmitting wireless?
What we're starting to find is like at bigger rallies where there's a lot of interference, you want to be plugged in directly. And that goes for my ATT MiFi too. I'll plug directly into that.
From the camera?
From the camera. So I'll have a cord, the Ethernet cord plugged into the camera, plugged into the device. Yeah, I'll just leave it plugged in, and then if I need to switch cameras, I'll just plug it into the other camera. It picks it up basically immediately, and it's just pretty much seamless.
That was the workflow I was thinking that was based on you tag something, or are you sending everything, or are you just sending tagged?
I'm editing, and I'm sending like the frames that I want to send. Now, once I had a few moments to once they got him out of there, my editor was like, man, just start sending everything. So I literally would just scroll through and send. So I'm not sure how many I sent, but the images were moving so quickly that we had images on the wire before anyone really knew what was going on. And as far as the blood and everything else from the video and from the television feed, you couldn't see that. So I think it was our images that once they hit the AP wire or the Times or whatever, that's when people started to see the blood and everything else.
It's just incredible how the technology, we utilize technology to help us do our jobs better.
Sure.
Which also, the technology of the IAF and lock-on tracking, is that the focus mode that you have on?
Yeah, I mean, I use the.
It's funny how you don't even. It's not. I will tell people when I'm in press areas and I'm working with AP or Getty people, you guys are so focused on shooting, and sometimes the technology, it's an afterthought.
Yeah. So I mean, gosh, so I use a couple different focus modes because sometimes I'll find that if I'll turn off that tracking if there's people behind them because it will sometimes jump or whatever. But yeah, I use the tracking focus, and that it locks on the faces, and then you can recompose, and that thing stays right there. It's amazing. It's these cameras are unbelievable, man. But as far as as being a gearhead, I'm definitely not. I know it works, and I know obviously how to use the camera with my eyes closed in the dark upside down.
Yep.
I know how to use the tool.
I'm
just not the right person to speak on it.
Well, what's interesting is you're going to start seeing newer technologies that will allow you, and we're seeing it with some of the new Canons that are coming, where you can do a face priority mode where you would put the president or former President Trump's face in, and it will prioritize that person if it sees them.
Yeah, I think these cameras have that, but we just haven't had much luck with it yet.
Yeah.
But I would assume that they're working on improving that. But I was telling someone last night that they were asking about do you shoot in auto this or auto that, and and letting the camera choose the face priority. I want to be in complete control of the camera at all times. So I'll shoot 95% of what I do in manual mode. I don't want the camera to have any control over anything. I want to be doing everything on my own. I don't want that camera because, I'm in charge of the camera. The camera's not in charge of me.
And it's the experience, your experience. I mean, I when I'm teaching people today, it's like the exposure is right in front of your face now.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
It's not like we have a clean view that's the brightest thing ever and you're just trying to line up the needle in the middle. You still look at the meter a little bit, but you have the exposure in front of you and you shouldn't really be off at all.
Yeah, and not only that, I mean, at this point in my life, in my career, I know just by, I know where I'm starting. I know around what it's going to be, but I can look at light and know what Kelvin it is. It's just, it's just those reps that you're taking that helps you with all this. And I will say this, the only time I'll use like an auto mode is when I'm between assignments and I'm walking around with my cameras. I'll put auto ISO on and I'll have like a high shutter speed at 2.8. And I'll let just in case that if I'm in a motorcade or something like that and I see something out the window and I just got to come up really quick and the light might be changing, we might be in a tunnel, we might be here, we might be there, I will throw it into auto ISO in those in-between moments between assignments or just so I can start there and go from there.
That's a good point because I mean, I'm pretty outspoken with auto ISO in a lot of situations, more so when people are in a situation where the light isn't changing, but then the auto ISO is being thrown off by something that's bright or something that's dark when it really shouldn't. But in those situations where you're going from shade to bright sun, wildlife stuff, and also indoors to outdoors, motorcade inside to motorcade outside, stuff happens so fast that the ISOs are, it's fine at this point.
Yeah, no, if I'm going down the road at, 60 miles an hour, 70 miles an hour and things are changing, I do have that auto ISO and I'll even use the auto white balance for that. For when I'm on an assignment, I'm using manual everything.
What is in your everyday gear bag when you're out here?
Like everyone knows, I like to work light. Like I don't like to have all the extra stuff hanging on me and everything else. So I don't carry a lot of stuff. So my gear on 90% of what I do, I have a 24 to 70, a 70 to 200, both on A9 3s, and I'll carry in my backpack a 1.4 extender, the Sony 1.4 extender. That'll give me a little bit more. If I'm going overseas, I'll also bring a 100 to 400, or I think at that Trump rally I may have had a 100 to 400 with me as well. I hate the lens, but sometimes it's needed. But the 90% of what I carry is just 24 to 70, 70 to 200, A9 3s. That's it.
Batteries, basic stuff.
So the thing about transmitting with these cameras is it does kill the batteries pretty quickly. So I'll carry like 8 batteries, eight extra batteries, and my laptop, chargers, internet cords, anything, all that stuff that you would need to keep working. So plane hits, I could pick up my backpack and be ready to go.
Yep. And now the new transmitter from Sony is the go-to for everybody right now.
Absolutely. It was such a big help. I still carry my ATT MiFi. I have my Sony transmitter that has a T-Mobile SIM in it. So I'll have ATT, T-Mobile, and then my phone will be Verizon. So usually a lot of times the way we work is like if one of the signals is down, maybe another one will be up. So, depending where you are in the country and what you're doing, like T-Mobile might really work. T-Mobile seems to work well in like more rural areas. And this is like, I'm not like an expert, but it seems anecdotal. And then like my Verizon and ATT, for my backups, but that Sony is my new go-to.
The Sony people told me that you can have virtual SIMs on here.
Yes.
So you could have multiples.
Yeah. So that's exactly. So I haven't jumped into that yet, but I will download some virtual SIMs. And the other thing that is amazing about this is it will act as a pass-through. So let's say I'm in a hotel ballroom that's 200 feet underground. There's no signal, but there's a Wi-Fi. Well, the Wi-Fi usually has a splash page, and our cameras wouldn't be able to connect directly to the Wi-Fi because it has that splash page. But now I can connect to the hotel Wi-Fi through the Sony and plug in my camera, and it'll go through and transmit that signal to my cameras. It's amazing. I've used it several times now.
It's awesome. The tech, the tools, they help us.
Dude, I'm telling you, that for me is one of the biggest things is, just being able to, get the images out, because right now it's still the biggest stressor is getting images to the desk, and especially at bigger rallies. Now that we're in election season, those MiFi units are the first to go. So being able to hop into an arena Wi-Fi or a hotel Wi-Fi really helps.
So the last thing, the Sony guys were saying you can get enterprise data, which might put you onto a different band signal than the regular cell phone people.
Oh, really?
Which might give you priority, because they do say that there's first responder, like cell phones for first responders never go down because they are on a different frequency. So there might be cards that work on a different, put you above everybody.
Look, the day that this happened, I was absolutely shocked, because I'm telling you, man, it's the fastest I've ever transmitted in my entire life. I would hit the button and it would go green. It was insane. I don't know what was going on, but like I said, my cell phone was down, my MiFi was down, but that Sony transmitter for some reason it was working. And I don't know if it's because I was on the T-Mobile and not that many people out there were on the T-Mobile bandwidth, but it was unbelievable and a huge help.
So one of the biggest questions that I saw is who owns the pictures is one of the biggest questions.
Of course. So I'm a staff photographer. I've been a staff photographer for almost 21 years. So AP owns the copyright. So, I've been getting a lot of questions like, oh, well, do I have permission to do this? Do I have permission to do that? And it's, they deal with all that. I'm not in charge, but I would imagine that they would probably try to protect their copyright. I'm just not sure how that works. I have received emails before when people had used a photo that I took on a business somewhere, and they said, hey, man, why are you suing me? And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm not suing you. But, sometimes the lawyers will go after people that if they're stealing the copyright.
And this one, and then it's hard to fight, because when it becomes newsworthy or it becomes overwhelming, it's like, well, that goes out the window.
Yeah. It's funny because people, I'm getting tons and tons of messages with people sending me links to, people selling on T-shirts and this and that and the other thing. That's none of my concern. I'm just doing the job.
Now, when it comes to Pulitzer Prize type things, is that even on your mind? Does that
God, no.
even
Absolutely
matter?
Not. No, absolutely not. The only thing I cared about was, so I work for AP, and I tell people this all the time. It's like we have a long history of amazing photojournalism, and when it came my time to hold that standard, I was able to do it. That's what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about just living up to those that went before me. I don't want to come back to the office and look people in the eye after I just dropped the ball. But I was able to do a pretty good job, and thankfully hold the standard. I don't even enter contests. It's no. Like all my colleagues always tease me because the contest thing has never been my thing.
I'm not a big fan of entering contests. I've told people a million times, if you have to pay to enter a contest, don't do it. If it's something free, maybe consider it, but it's super subjective.
And I don't have any problems with it, and I think it's amazing, a way to show photojournalism, and you see some of the best photojournalism in the world. It's just, for me, it's just never been a priority of mine. But man, there's some incredible imagery that you might not see if they weren't in those contests. So I absolutely get it. It just hasn't been a focus of mine.
Now, the question here is, this is a busy time with the campaign trail and
Sure.
everything. I heard they recalled Doug Mills from going to Paris to stay here to photograph the campaigns. Has anybody approached you in the past about joining the campaigns to be a team photographer type thing?
Never. No. I always wanted to be a photojournalist, and photojournalism has always been my focus. I have no desire to work for the government or do any sort of stuff like that. It's never my thing. I can't imagine giving up on journalism ever. This is what I want to do. This is like who I am and what I'm about. Informing people and doing this job, and that's all I ever wanted to do.
Now, is there an event or something that you haven't been able to be around and photograph that you really truly want to be there to capture?
Man, I'm trying to. Oh, you know what? Everyone. Everyone thinks I'm crazy, but I was like, man, I would love to go like do a red carpet. Like, I feel like that would be fun. It's so outside the realm of anything I've ever done. But I've done Super Bowl and I've done Olympics and I've done those types of things. I've covered basically covered everything. But yeah, I think like man, maybe like a red carpet one time, maybe or something like that could be fun. But people always tease me like, man, you're crazy. It's hard to do, but I think it would be fun.
Yeah, it's amazing. I wrote something here, and it's like, it seems like you're there when there's a there, but in order to be there, you kind of always need to be there, right?
It's hilarious because people online, the internet's amazing, but some guy was like, man, he was looking at my photo of the guy throwing the shoe at President Bush, and then obviously what happened last week. And he's like, man, this guy's like the Forrest Gump of photography. And I thought that was pretty funny. But you're just kind of always there in the background. And I've been doing this for so long that you really are on the front lines of history. I've covered wild events, man. I remember the first meeting between Trump and Kim Jong-un was like, it's just like you're having like an out of body experience. Like, man, this is really weird. But yeah, you do have to be there. That's what photojournalism is all about.
And I think younger people, not just younger people, but non-photojournalists don't understand the amount of time that is put into being somewhere, that the times that don't pay off. I mean, it's 99 out of 100 times you could wait for 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours for something, for like a 2-second thing. You either get it, you don't get it, or it doesn't happen. No,
I mean, listen, man, I've people are online, like the conspiracy theorists are starting. They're like, man, why was the chief Washington photographer in a random Trump rally? And I was like, man, because I wasn't standing on a ladder outside of a courthouse somewhere. We do so much stuff that people don't see, like what you were just saying. So, I've spent, hours and hours outside waiting for someone to walk by me or arrive at a courthouse or do this or do that. And you're right, man. There's a lot of time that we spend just waiting around. And, sometimes it doesn't pay off, but that's the job.
Exactly. So when the four of you, to bring it back to, there's 4 of you in the buffer zone.
Correct.
How do those 4 get picked to be there?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's just that that's just who we were traveling with that day. So the reason I went to that rally, I was going to the RNC, and originally I was supposed to fly to Milwaukee on Saturday, and they called me and said, "Hey, man, we're getting rumors that Trump might announce his VP," which is pretty standard. When before you get to the convention, you would have a VP nominee. So we thought it was getting closer, and we thought that he was going to announce a VP. So I ended up going up on Friday to Pittsburgh, which is right near Butler, and we thought that we were going to get a VP announcement. And then that morning we knew that he wasn't going to announce, but I was there, so I might as well just cover it.
From the Trump campaign side, like, because I know they don't allow everybody in the buffer. Is there a protocol there?
Yeah, so that the campaign will make their choice about who they want in the buffer, who they allow in the buffer. So I think that they look at reach, or it's different. Like from an official White House event, it's the same group of photographers versus like these campaigns will sometimes have a different mix of what organizations they want there.
All right, to almost bring this to a close, you guys are done. The president gets taken to the hospital. The former president gets taken to the hospital. What happens when you guys are you guys traveling together? Is there a van? Is there an SUV in the motorcade?
No. So for this, we all traveled independently because they don't have like a press pool traveling with them yet. So we're there, independently. So we were sending all our photos, and we were in this is fun. We were stuck in the parking lot because the road was like, there's like one road in and one road out of this place. So we were in the parking lot for a couple hours. And I remember being in Doug's car, and we're sitting next to each other just looking at stuff on our laptops. And I guess Doug like turned his laptop to me. He's like, "You're not going to believe this." And right there on his laptop, I saw the image of that bullet. And I was like, man, that is insane. And this is before anyone knew that it was, they were still trying to figure out, okay, was he cut from flying glass? Was he cut from this? Is it an actual bullet? And like, I could see it clear as day right there. So, but we're all traveling independent from each other. And I had to, I had to park it in like some guy's backyard. I paid some guy to let me park in his backyard. And I had to walk like a half hour at the end of this day to get back to this guy's house, and and then the next day I was on a flight to Milwaukee, and we saw each other at the convention.
It never ends. I mean, it's always on to the next. People always ask, like, what's your favorite photo you've ever taken? And the answer is the next one.
I've been getting that a lot, and people are like, well, so what do you think about this photo? And I was like, honestly, I haven't even had a chance to think about it, because literally the next day I'm on a plane to Milwaukee, and then I'm working for really long days for a week, and then as soon as that ended, the next morning I'm on the way to Grand Rapids, where Trump and J.D. Vance had their first joint rally. And then I got back on a plane and I flew to D.C. And as I'm landing in D.C., they're like, Biden stepping down. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like crazy. So, it's always on to the next.
So you're going to have a pretty busy next 100 days at least.
Yeah, it's certainly a sprint to the finish here. We're going to be going pretty hard until November, and Netanyahu's here this week, and so the news goes on, man. So as far as like, what happened, a week ago is done, and we're on to the next one, and just hopefully keep doing the job and making storytelling images as best we can.
Evan, I appreciate you taking the time to come on today.
Of course, man. For you, anything.
Oh, for me, anything. All right. I'll remember that. Thank you. I appreciate
it, man. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it.
Once again, I want to thank Evan for taking the time to speak to us, to sit down for an interview and share all the information that he did. I mean, the biggest takeaways are that it's, the gear's important, but the gear's not important. It's what you do with it. It's how you act in the moment. And also how he put himself out there and met the right people. And I just thought it was great hearing about how Doug Mills took him under his wing and helped him out with a lens. And that's the point of photography. If you're in a position to help others become better, and you're in a position to let someone borrow a lens or give a camera to someone who's up and coming, it pays dividends in the long run. And that's what I think everybody should try to do. You try to give back as much as you can. When you're starting out, you can't afford it, you can't do it, but there's usually someone there who's able to help. And then in the future, when you're able to help, you end up paying it forward. So I want to thank all of you guys for watching this. Thank you for the questions that came in. And once again, thank you to Evan for sitting with us and telling us all of these amazing stories and how you captured the shot. Thank you very much for watching. Jared Polin, PhotoJournalistPhoto.com. See ya.